New analysis from the Congressional Budget Office estimates Republicans' so-called Big Beautiful Bill would increase the debt by about $3.4 trillion over the next decade. The new dynamic scoring data is another blow to President Trump's signature legislation, which passed the House last month, but is now facing scrutiny and significant revisions in the Senate. As it stands, the House Republican bill would extend and expand Trump's expiring tax cuts from 2017 and would pay for some of those expensive parts with deep cuts to federal anti-poverty programs like Medicaid and food stamps. The fresh data factors in the effect of both higher GDP growth and higher interest rates and exceeds the previous estimate of $2.4 trillion. So if your concerns about the debt weren't enough already, there's this. Republican lawmakers have set a deadline of July 4th to send the bill to President Trump's desk, but are likely to push that amid disagreements among senators about the impact of the debt and deficit. Joining us now, congressional reporter for Semafor, Eleanor Mueller. Eleanor, the Senate is unveiling the key components of their legislative changes to this bill. What's troubling to senators about that? What are we hearing from House members who were already concerned about the debt but tried to get over it because of the political currents here? What are you making of the changes from the Senate side?
Yeah, so there's two changes that Senate Republicans themselves have raised concerns about. You know, one is this more aggressive changes to Medicaid. We've seen moderates like Senator Hawley raise concerns over that. You know, of particular concern is the fact that they're actually lowering the tax on healthcare providers that helps pay for Medicare. That was kind of a red line for some of those folks. Susan Collins, who's the chair of the Appropriations Committee, has said that she's worried about that, too. There's also this question of how long to take to phase out the Biden-era clean energy tax credits. And that's something that, you know, Senator Tillis told me yesterday he's still looking to get more time so that businesses can have as much flexibility in ramping down their plans. And so those are both issues where I think the conference itself, even in the Senate, is raising concerns and trying to make some tweaks. Yeah. As far as the House goes, the main change that I think is problematic for them is this idea of this cap on the state and local tax deduction. You know, the House passed a bill that would quadruple it to $40,000. It was a big win for blue state Republicans like Mike Lawler. And, you know, the Senate proposed in its text out this week to bring that all the way back down to its current level. And that provoked a lot of upset among those same moderates who they're going to need to get this thing done in the House.
Yeah, I think there's some really fascinating dynamics here. For example, the fact that we are calling Senator Josh Hawley a moderate in this way. I mean, it's fascinating. And what does it tell you about this bill and the fact that some of the people who are usually the most aligned with MAGA are actually concerned about it?
Yeah, we've seen some very fascinating alliances coming out of this. And I think Hawley, it's one great example. Again, Susan Collins, another great example. You know, these people who are typically pretty staunch conservatives in some ways and on this are saying, you know, I think you've taken it too far and I need to pump the brakes. We're seeing a lot of the same conversations on the rescissions package that Trump sent to the Hill that the House just passed. Susan Collins has said, you know, some of those cuts to foreign aid, they go too far for me, and I'm going to have to make some changes before we move this through the Senate.
Yeah, I do think we're seeing some pretty interesting dynamics here around what it means to be MAGA. I think we're also seeing that when it comes to this potential for the U.S. to become directly involved in the Israel-Iran conflict. I was struck yesterday by the Vice President, J.D. Vance, going up to Capitol Hill. It seemed like, if I was reading between the lines on what he was saying, that he was trying to lay the groundwork, at least for an argument in favor of Trump if he were to decide to do direct strikes or more directly implicate and involve the United States in this. I mean, talk about what he said, why he was up there, what you saw in that.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's interesting and notable, first of all, that he came at kind of short notice. You know, normally we have a little more advanced warning if the vice president's going to go to the Hill, and it was kind of the day of that the White House was like, hey, Vance is going to be at your weekly lunch with Senate Republicans. He talked about reconciliation super briefly. I think it was just enough to say, you know, as long as you do this by August, we'll be fine.
Right.
But most of it, he did spend talking about Iran. And it's the same message that we've seen, honestly, on almost every single policy issue in this administration. You know, give the president as much flexibility and as much really unconditional support to do whatever he wants to do, regardless of how you might personally feel about it. And we'll see where we end up from there, which is, a new tone for this for Congress generally on foreign policy.
A new tone. And then also, we were talking about this with Jake Traylor from Politico yesterday, the idea that when it comes to an interventionist foreign policy, it is a rift in MAGA world, because even there are clips circulating online of an early view of an interview that Tucker Carlson did with Senator Ted Cruz, where they are sparring over whether or not to get involved in Iran. These two men that are typically on the same side of everything now really going at each other. You've got Marjorie Taylor Greene defending Tucker Carlson as the president calls him kooky.
Yeah.
I mean, these are some really strange layers here. How are you seeing it play out on the Hill?
Strange bedfellows.
Strange times.
I think that one casualty we've seen is this push to enact Russia sanctions. You know, senators that basically told us yesterday that they were completely putting that push aside until, not only things can settle in the Middle East, but then also, for these kind of fault lines on the Hill to cool off a little bit. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of different opinions, a lot of people agreeing with each other who don't normally agree with each other, and it's been fascinating to watch.
Yeah, I mean, for those of us who are students of the Hill and of what it means to be a Republican, a Democrat in this day and age, we are really watching some fascinating things unfold in real time. Eleanor coming on and breaking down all of those dynamics for us. We always appreciate it. Thank you.